This is Megan McNames, Director of the Digital Media Miner, and this is the Week 2 video, Storing, Exchanging, and Accessing Information with Associative Networks for ICOM 101. So the Wikipedia entry that you read in Week 1 of this course discussed an article titled As We May Think, which was published in 1945 and written by Vannevar Bush, a scientist and engineer who was thinking about the possibilities of computing in the 1940s. You're going to read Bush's article in ICOM 210, Social Media, although obviously if you Google it, you can find it online if you want to read it now. Bush was writing in 1945 on the heels of World War II, in which the U.S. government had devoted significant amounts of time, money, and attention toward the technologies of war, something Bush had been involved in. The gist of Bush's article is that the U.S., now that the war is over, should focus its attention on computer technologies that would not be used for war, but rather create a vast system of information that could be stored, shared, accessed, and communicated at any time by anybody, including the information that was gathered during the big war push. He basically came up with the inspirational idea for not just the internet, but the computers and software that we would use to access the internet and the information on it. Although he didn't use modern terminology like internet and software. He demonstrated these ideas by describing what he called the Memex, a device for storing, analyzing, and communicating information from various sources. This is Bush's sketch of what it might look like, although it's not the look that's important, but rather what it does. The important thing for you here in ICOM 101 is to see where the concept of emerging media comes from. It's this idea Bush was working with. He wasn't focused on specific technologies like video displays, holograms, or any particular media technology, but rather the larger concept of how we can all manage and share information, then interpret the information, compare it with our own, annotate it, add context, and so on. And the idea was that this would create a new way of thinking, and so he titled his article, As We May Think. Instead of each person doing their own research, gathering their own data and information, interpreting it for themselves, ferreting out all the related information and trying to understand it all on their own, machines like the Memex, or today the internet, would help people share the task of gathering, storing, and understanding data and information. We would gather everything together into a giant pool and then think together rather than on our own. And that's really the central concept in the digital media miner and emerging media in general. How do we use digital media to gather, store, analyze, and communicate information? Maybe we do so by gathering video interviews about a topic and splicing them together into a YouTube video or a YouTube playlist. Or maybe we do that by creating a tool that searches and analyzes tweets to discover trends. It depends on what the problem is, how we use emerging media to develop a solution. Easley and Kleinberg, who you're reading this week, expand on the idea of gathering, storing, analyzing, and communicating information in how they describe the internet as a big network for doing just that. The real power of the web, they say, is that you can organize anything in any way. This is something that you really couldn't do before, at least not easily. When information was relegated to printed things like books or pamphlets, for example, you had to put them in a building so that people could access them. That would be a library. And so people could find them, you had to put the books and the pamphlets and the printed materials in the library in some kind of order, usually by topic, but you could also order them by location, time, continuums, a number system, or randomly, as Shedroff suggests, or something that I've seen is popular for home libraries, even by color. If you wanted to rearrange the books from topic order to, let's say, alphabetical, that would be a huge undertaking, as you would have to take all of the books off the shelves, reorganize them, and reshelve them. The internet, however, allows us to organize in multiple ways. If you have a list of web pages instead of physical printed pages with information, you can organize them in any way you want, and you can reorganize with the click of a button, which you can't do with printed pages. Like here on Amazon, where you can organize by price, by relevance, or even by publication date just by clicking a button. Even more than that, you can organize not just by topic or alphabet, but by association. If I want to, I can make my own web page with links to other web pages, and I can order it however I want and even add my own notes. So here on Amazon, you can see that I've made a wish list of books about digital media that I think belong together. In my mind, they are associated, and I can reorganize their pages on Amazon into a series that I come up with, and I can even leave comments about these pages. So these are associations that I'm making. I can come up with what the association is. Maybe I organize these by what I think shares topics or shares ideas, or maybe by the web pages that I like the best, or by the ones that I think are easiest to read. So these are all associations that I'm making, not common, typical ways of organizing that we had with printed materials like Shedroff describes. So Easley and Kleinberg are pointing out this really amazing feature of the web, that it allows for associative organization and associative networks. But what is the point of organizing by association, or organizing at all anyway? This is where Shedroff comes in. And to me, this article that you're reading, called Information Interaction Design, is really a seminal article that more or less gives a unified theory of digital media. The key to understanding Shedroff's article is in understanding this graphic. What Shedroff is showing here is that the basic building blocks of knowledge, of knowing anything, is data. If you want to know how many people live in your state, there's data on that. If you want to know where your state ranks in terms of population compared to other states, you can use that data to find that out. If you want to know the best way to treat a sprained ankle, there's research data on different treatments. Data is the first step toward knowledge, but data itself needs some interpretation. On its own, we can't really make heads or tails of what the data is. And here's an example. Here's some data on free and reduced lunches in Indiana schools. So this is a chart that the Department of Education publishes every year, showing every school in Indiana and how many students attend and how many of those students are on free or reduced price meal plans subsidized by the state. So here's the data. Here it is. Great, huh? You're really learning something about this, right? Well, no. Without organization, this data is just not useful. We have to organize it. We have to look for patterns in order to understand it. And so the first step in knowing something is finding the data. But the second step is organizing that data to see trends and meaning. The result of this is information. So here's that same data, but now I've organized it by number. So I've calculated the percentage of students who receive free and reduced price lunches, and then I've organized the table by highest percentage to lowest percentage. And now I can see some information here because I can see some patterns and I can compare. These schools at the top have the highest percentage of free and reduced lunch. I can even now find the average and see just how far out of the norm they are. Now I have information. There starts to be meaning behind this data. Something's happening at these schools that's different from normal, but I'm still not yet to knowledge. What does this information mean? Are reduced and free lunches good or bad? That's where storytelling and discussion can come in. We're going to focus on storytelling because telling stories about this information, by having discussions, we can start to gain real knowledge about the topic. I might find out by talking to students and teachers at the school that the higher percentage is good because it means that there's all the students who need assistance are getting it and kids aren't going hungry. Or maybe I hear stories about how it's bad because it means the school has a lot of kids who live in poverty at home, or more likely I might find that it's a mix of both, or even other factors factor in, like the possibility for fraud. But I wouldn't know that without the stories and without the discussion. So where do we arrive in terms of emerging media? Emerging media is data, like text data or numerical data, like numbers, pictures, videos, tweets, information about them, how many there are, who sent them. But it's also a system for organizing that data so that it becomes information. And the result is that information is created and available online. So with this information interaction design, if we think about the internet as doing just this, the data, like Bush said, is no longer individual data, but rather data from multiple people and multiple sources. And to turn it into information, we can organize it using computers and using other people online to help us and create information. And so we create a network that not only has data, but allows for that data to become information and eventually knowledge. And you probably thought emerging media was just a buzzword, but I hope that you'll see now what emerging media really is about, which is about the data online, the media, the data and the media. We can sometimes use those words interchangeably. Who it's coming from, how it's being organized, and how meaning is created through the network.